Beza the Bounding Spring. This is a 4 mana 4/5 in white. This is basically a creature that also does what Sunset Revelry for 2 mana does. 4 mana for a 4/5 legendary elemental elk. When it enters, create a treasure token if an opponent controls more lands than you. So you can ramp. You gain 4 life if an opponent has more life than you. Create 2 1/1 bluefish creature tokens if an opponent controls more creatures than you. And draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you. Oh, by the way, it's a 4 mana 4/5 as well on the board. So even if you throw it out for 4 mana and it gets immediately removed, you're probably moding at least 2 of those. You're probably getting 4 life and 2 1/1 creature blockers on the board. You might even hit 3 or 4 of them. This is going to be a staple in control decks. This is going to be the creature in the 4 slot. This replaces Wandering Emperor. It doesn't do the same thing as Wandering Emperor, don't get me wrong, but this replaces Wandering Emperor. 4 slot, I'm telling you right now, Wandering Emperor rotates, craft 2 of these, put it in where the Wandering Emperor was. You'll thank me later. There's lots of uses for it. I'm recommending cards that I think you should craft immediately and try and build around. These are cards that I think are going to define the meta for 3 years. All right, so we're going to go back through and we're going to show you the ones that are going to be the best cards of the set. Infamous Cruelclaw is a 3/3 in Rakdos colors. It's 3 mana for a 3/3 with Menace. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. So cascade to a non-land. You may cast that card by discarding a card rather than paying its mana cost. This is going to be really strong in Rakdos Sacrifice type decks. I cascade into a Vein Ripper, I discard a land, and I get a Vein Ripper out for free. It's got Menace, so if it doesn't get removed right away, it's got a high likelihood on turn 4 of actually hitting the opponent. Especially if you're in black and red, you can remove a creature so that there's only 1 creature on the board, so its Menace lets it deal combat damage to a player. So I think this Infamous Cruelclaw is going to be really strong. In my opinion, this is like Glissa, but for Rakdos. I didn't put this on my list, but now that I've looked through the whole set, this is going to be really strong. 5 mana for a 6/6 Ygra, Eater of All, legendary elemental cat. Ward is sacrifice of food. Other creatures are food artifacts in addition to their other types. So every creature, except for her, becomes a food artifact. This is Ward sacrifice of food, but it's basically Ward sacrifice a creature or food. Think of it that way, because all your creatures turn into food. I didn't put this on my list because I don't think it's one of the top 10, but because it's going to only go in food decks. Whenever a food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put 2/+1 counters on Ygra, Eater of All. She's already a 6/6 for 5 mana. She's already got a good ward. Whenever, there's no once per turn. This can be really strong. It doesn't have trample, but you put trample on this thing. I didn't write her down at first because I wasn't sure, but now that I'm looking at the whole set and how much synergy there is in the set, she might be very strong. So those are the first 2. Next is Beza the Bounding Spring. This is a 4 mana 4/5 in white. This is basically a creature that also does what Sunset Revelry for 2 mana does. 4 mana for a 4/5 legendary elemental elk. When it enters, create a treasure token if an opponent controls more lands than you. So you can ramp. You gain 4 life if an opponent has more life than you. Create 2 1/1 bluefish creature tokens if an opponent controls more creatures than you. And draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you. Oh, by the way, it's a 4 mana 4/5 as well on the board. So even if you throw it out for 4 mana and it gets immediately removed, you're probably moding at least 2 of those. You're probably getting 4 life and 2 1/1 creature blockers on the board. You might even hit 3 or 4 of them. This is going to be a staple in control decks. This is going to be the creature in the 4 slot. This replaces Wandering Emperor. It doesn't do the same thing as Wandering Emperor, don't get me wrong, but this replaces Wandering Emperor. 4 slot, I'm telling you right now, Wandering Emperor rotates, craft 2 of these, put it in where the Wandering Emperor was. You'll thank me later. There's lots of uses for it. I'm recommending cards that I think you should craft immediately and try and build around. These are cards that I think are going to define the meta for 3 years, regardless of what else they print. This is just ridiculous value. Okay, next is Maha, it's Feathers Knight. Everybody's saying this is one of the top cards. It's obvious. It's a 5 mana 6/5, flying trample. Ward is discard a card, which is very strong because this is going into a discard deck that has already discarded your opponent's cards by the time it goes in. Think you throw this out on turn 6. Turn 5, you throw out Aklazot's Bat. So if they have any more removals left, they get rid of Aklazot's, which turns into a land. If they don't, Aklazot's attacks, discards a card from them, then you throw this out. It's flying trample 6/5, Ward board is discard a card. So now they have to draw 2 cards if they had no cards in their hand. And every turn, Aclazot's making him discard, or you're playing a discard deck. But creatures your opponents control have base toughness 1, means you can run a 3 mana, all creatures get -2/-2 in a control deck, and literally just wipe every creature off the board except for yours. Everybody knows that this is super strong. Right now, I'm thinking this might be my number 1, but I don't know. Beza might become my number 1. Right now, these two, Beza and Maha, they're definitely in my top 3. There might be another one that pushes them down, but these two are probably in the top 3 for sure. These are the kind of cards that define a meta. Okay, these are the first 4 that I think, these are the mythic rares ones. And then this is the only season I think is worth mentioning. The Season of Weaving, the 6 mana blue one. This one's going into control decks. 6 mana, you can draw 5 cards. 6 mana, you can return each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand and draw 2 cards. Or you could choose an artifact or creature you control, create a token that's a copy of it, and then return everything else into its owner's hand. This is a really strong control card draw spell. And even just 6 mana drawing 5 cards, because you choose up to 5 pause worth of modes, you may choose the same mode more than once. So you can literally, for 6 mana, just draw 5 cards. Or you could copy one of your creatures or artifacts and then draw 3 cards. This is going to be a good card. Next one is Valley Questcaller. 2 mana for a 2/3 rabbit warrior. Already 2 mana for a 2/3? Balmy. Whenever one or more other rabbits, birds, bats, and or mice you control enters, scry 1. It doesn't say non-token. It says whenever a rabbit, bat, bird, or mouse you control enter, scry 1. Every rabbit token, scry 1. And other rabbits, bats, birds, and mice get +1/+1. It's an anthem for 4 types of creatures. There's a lot of rabbits, there's a lot of bats, there's a lot of birds, and there's a few amount of mice. Yeah, this is a good anthem lord. Valley Questcaller is going to be big. And then I said Valley Rotcaller. I am an Orzhov player. This is another one because this is a squirrel warlock. And we already know that Golgari colors for squirrels. So 2 mana for a 1/3 with menace. When it attacks, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of other squirrels, bats, lizards, and rats you control. This is going to be in the food deck. You're going to need this in your food deck. And the key is these are not legendaries. This is an Anthem Rabbit Warrior that you can have 4 of in your deck. And if you have 3 on the board, all rabbits, bats, birds, and mice get +3/+3. This is not a legendary. Same as Squirrel Warlock. You can put 4 out. So these are strong. The other one's okay, but the valleys are all good, but they're all tribal. All right, next one is Essence Channeler. This is going to go into life gain decks and bat decks. This is a 2 mana, 2/1 bat cleric. As long as you've lost life this turn, it has flying and vigilance. Whenever you gain life, put a +1 counter on it. When it dies, put its counter on target creature you control. So this is just a lot for 2 mana. So Essence Channeler here is like Voice of the Blessed, because whenever you gain life, you put a +1 counter on it. So this is a life gain deck. It doesn't fly automatically like the Voice does after it has 4 +1 counters, but every turn, if you lose life, it can fly. So this goes for Orzhov life gain deck. So you're going to do stuff that does damage to you. You're going to put card draw in there that hurts yourself so that it gets flying and vigilance. And then you're going to gain life and keep putting +1 counters on it. With the bat, there is a bat that we're going to get to that's also the new Lunar veteran that any creature comes in and gain 1 life. So Essence Channeler is going to be very strong. Cragclaw's Heist is another one I put. This is really good. 2 mana. This might be the top card. This might be in the top 3 as well. Cragclaw's Heist is 2 mana. Gift a card to where your opponent gets to draw a card before this goes off. Target opponent reveals their hand. So this is a card that you're always going to gift to your opponent. You will always choose gift in this. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. Exile that card. If the gift was promised, you may cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. So you force your opponent to draw a card, and then you look at their hand and pick the best spell in their hand, and it's yours now. That is better than Siphon Insight. This is discard plus Siphon Insight in 1 freaking card. You're stealing their card, but you're also stealing it from their hand. You're looking at their hand and picking the best freaking spell out of their hand, and it's yours until you want to cast it. That, especially with discard becoming a very big thing in this set, this is big. This is big. I'm going to put this star next to this. I think this might be in the top 3 as well. This is going to be a really, really big card. It's a sorcery, but all pilfer type cards are sorceries. This is pilfer and steal the card. This is a literal pilfer. Keen-Eyed Curator is next, right here. This is a 2 mana 3/3 Raccoon Scout. We already saw there's a decent amount of raccoons here. As long as there are 4 or more card types among cards exiled with it. It gets +4/+4 as trample. 1 mana of colorless, exile target card from a graveyard. It doesn't say opponent's graveyard, target card from a graveyard. So you have to exile 4 different card types: creature, land, planeswalker, instant, sorcery, artifact, enchantment. 4 exiles, and it gets +4/+4 and as trample. Oh, and by the way, it doesn't say do this once per turn. This is like Lion Sash, except it's not 1 white. This is exile with colorless. So cast this on turn 3, you got a 1 mana protection spell up. They don't remove it. Or you use the 1 mana protection spell and save it on the opponent's turn, let's say. Boom. 4 mana's up. Exile the cards before you attack. Exile 4 cards. 7/7 with trample on turn 4. This is gonna become a pain in the butt. I don't think this is top 3. I don't think this is top 5. This might be in top 10, but this is gonna be a good card. Spellgyre. There we go. Spellgyre is 4 mana in blue. This is going to replace Memory Deluge. It is 4 mana, choose 1, counter target spell, or surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. Not as good as Memory Deluge, but surveilling 2, look at the top 2 cards, pick whether you want 1 or 2 of them or none of them, and then draw 2 cards. It's almost the same as Deluge, but it gives you the optionality of countering target spell. So you can keep it up on your opponent's turn, they throw something big, boom, counter it. Okay, I don't draw cards, but I stop them from doing something good. They don't do anything I'm worried about, use the 4 mana, surveil 2, draw 2 cards. This is going to become a staple in control decks, around for 3 years. I'm telling you right now, this is the replacement for Memory Deluge in all of your control decks. Just put this in. It's uncommon, so you can craft 4 without even sweating the second that rotation happens. Next is Bandit's Talent. Notice most of the rares I just skipped right over because there just wasn't enough that was crazy. Bandit's Talent. This is great for discarding. 2 mana. When it enters, each opponent discards 2 cards unless they discard a non-land card. 2 mana. Opponent discards a card or they discard 2. So they can discard 2 lands or they discard a non-land card. Then level 2 is 1 mana. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if that player has 1 or fewer cards in their hand, they lose 2 life. This is not something you're going to want to cast on turn 2 all the time. This is something you might keep in your hand and get other discard going and then throw this out when you have 3 or 4 mana out so that it makes them discard the last card they have, and then you do the extra mana on the first time it comes out so that when their upkeep happens, they have 1 or fewer cards, they lose 2 life. This is a great tax for discard. 4 mana on the level 3 is at the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card for each opponent who has 1 or fewer cards in hand. Now that's only 1 card in standard. This is going to be even stronger in Commander, but I think this is a good card. Next is Overprotect. And this is going to be a standard in green. This is a new green protection spell that is just ridiculous. 2 mana, target creature you control. So Overprotect here is 2 mana for an instant. Target creature you control gets +3/+3 and gains trample, hexproof, and indestructible until end of turn. This is just everything you would want. 2 mana for +3/+3, and one other thing is what a normal thing would be. But this is 2 mana for +3/+3, trample, hexproof, and indestructible. So this is useful on your turn to do the +3/+3 trample, so you can go through Sheoldred, who's got Death Touch, but you don't die because you got indestructible. This is also good on opponent's turn when they try to do a fight spell or they try to do a removal spell on your creature. Hexproof, indestructible. This is going to be a staple protection spell. Tamiyo's Safekeeping, the best. Tamiyo says permanent. You can protect lands with Tamiyo's. Tamiyo's can protect anything and it gives you 2 life. Tamiyo's is hexproof and indestructible and 2 life. Tamiyo's is 1 mana is better. But this, for a creature deck, is even better because it gives you that trample. So you can use it on your turn to attack. It doesn't have to always be defensive. And that's why this is on my list. All right, next we've got Parting Guest. Oh, Parting Gust, sorry. This is the only removal that I think is great. This is awesome. This is only for creatures though. 2 mana. Exile target non-token creature. If the gift wasn't promised, return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter on it at the beginning of the next step. But if you gift a tapped 1/1 bluefish token creature, it exiles the non-token creature. So this is 2 mana. Your Sheoldred becomes a 1/1 tapped token. 2 mana at instant speed. I exchange your best creature for a 1/1 tapped token. That is very good, but it's only for creatures. It's not non-land permanent, so it's not going to make many control decks, but it is still a decent card because you're going to put it in a deck where you want to flash something / also get rid of opponent's shit. It's going to be worth crafting for specific decks. Next is the duo cards. Lifecreed Duos. So Lifecreed Duo replacing the Lunar Veteran. 2 mana for a flying bat bird. That's a 1/2. Whenever another creature you control enters, you gain 1 life. This is going to be a staple in every life gain deck. This is your new creatures entering the battlefield gain 1 life. It's not as good as Lunar Veteran because it doesn't come back, but it's a flying 1/2 that gives you life from every other creature. And it's a bat, so it's going to go in your bat decks. It's going to go in your bird decks just because it's flying and everything that uses creatures can use a little life here and there. So this replaces Lunar Veteran. Mark my words. Already going to be in every one of those decks. The other duos are okay. I didn't put any of the other ones down because I don't think they're that amazing. Crumb and Get It is next. Crumb and Get It, 1 mana instant, gift of food to your opponent. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If the gift was promised, that creature also gains indestructible until the end of turn. So this is just 1 mana, creature gets indestructible, plus it also gains +2/+2. You just promise them a food to save your creature. If you just want a +2/+2, it's 1, and you don't have to give them the food. So I think this is going to be in a lot of decks. I don't think this is game breaking. I just think this is a card that's going to be in a lot of decks, and it's going to be around for a while. And then we got Psychic Whorl. Psychic Whorl here is 3 mana, target opponent discards 2 cards. Then if you control a rat, surveil 2. So it's going to give you a reason to run rats with discard. So rats and discard is going to be a common thing. Dimir, black, blue, rat, discard deck. That might be something I make first off. We'll see. Next is Nettle Guard. 2 mana. This is a common mouse soldier for 3/1. It's a 2 mana 3/1 mouse in white. It's valiant. Whenever it becomes a target of spell for the first time, it gets +0/+2 until the end of turn. If you put I don't know, like the spell we just said before, the Crumb and Get It, that gives it +2/+2. It also gets a +2 toughness. But for 1 mana, you can sacrifice it and destroy target artifact or enchantment. These are always very valuable cards. Cathar Commando did this, but it had flash. This is probably replacing Cathar Commando just because it has more potential to stay out on the board with the Valiant. But it also just get rid of enchantments or artifacts. Next is Diresight. Right here, 3 mana. This is in black, the same kind of thing as a Memory Deluge type card. Surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. You lose 2 life. There's nothing wrong with this card at all. This is going to be the best 3 mana draw spell card in black. Surveil 2, then draw 2 cards. You lose 2 life. Doesn't get better than that, especially since there's a lot of stuff in black. If you lost life this turn, then X happens. There's a lot of pluses now to losing life on your turn in black. So that's Diresight. Then we got Lunar Convocation is an enchantment in Orzhov, 1 white, 1 black. At the beginning of your end step, if you gain life this turn, each opponent loses 1 life, so it's for life gain decks. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained and lost life this turn, I was mentioning doing damage to yourself to draw cards, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. For 2 mana, 1 black, and 1 of colorless. Pay 2 life, draw a card. So this has ways of hurting yourself. You throw this in a life gain deck, and now you can pay 2 life for 2 mana, draw a card. And by the way, that triggers gives you a 1/1 bat, which give you 1 life. And once again, if you gain life this turn, so you'll also do 1 damage to your opponent. This is going to be a very strong card. Pawn Prophet. This is what we were talking about, the Spirit Dog. This is in green or blue. 2 mana for a 1/1. When it enters, draw a card. Just going to be a basic card that goes into a lot of decks. And then the last one, once again, is here, Patchwork Banner. This is 3 mana. As it enters, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1. And it's also a mana rock, by the way. It's an artifact. Tap it, add 1 mana of any color. So 3 mana for a mana rock, but it's also an anthem for whatever creature type you like. So whatever tribal you're running, this is going in it because it's a mana rock and it's tribal, and we are losing Celestis, so you're going to need different mana rocks. That is my review of the set. I think the set is mid. I don't think it's ridiculous. I'll be honest with you. I don't think there's any game-breaking cards. It's missing removal. There's no fucking removal in this set. There's 1 Planeswalker. Is there a second Planeswalker? Very few special lands. These are all the token stuff. Nothing's replacing Farewell, folks. Nothing's replacing Farewell. Farewell is gone, and it's gone for good. There's no good Planeswalkers in the set. It's all just creatures. So these are the 3 types of decks that you're going to want to make when you open up your 10, 20, 50 packs, whatever you do. Then it rotates, and all of your other decks are bad, and you're like, fuck, I don't want to add something to it. You're going to make either a Bat Tribal, a discard deck, or a Food/Squirrel tribal deck. Those are the 3 themes that I see, and there's Rabbit Tribal in here as well. Those are the strongest ones I saw out of the set. So Bat Tribal, Rabbit Tribal, Squirrel/Food Tribal, and discard. It's all tribal and then discard, and that's what's coming out of this set. You're going to see a lot of discard, and you're going to see a lot of go wide creature stuff. So that is my review. This is going up on YouTube. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.